are 66 carnivorous plants in the United States, but one strange species stands out amongst them all.
The Venus flytrap is very unique because it's the only species that's in its genus. It's kind of evolutionarily all by itself.
That supreme weirdness has also made the flytrap a cultural icon. But there are increasingly worries about the health of its wild population, because the Venus flytrap only grows natively in a very narrow and specific habitat, one that only exists in a single place on the planet.
You'd think it would be growing in the Amazon or the Congo or something like that, but it's growing right here, right up the road.
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home in North Carolina at the crossroads of the South. This week, the tale of a bloodthirsty plant that has mesmerized us for generations and its remarkable quest to survive. For better or worse, the 1986 cult classic movie Little Shop of Horrors introduced much of the world to the Venus flytrap.
Feed me Seymour, feed me all night long. That's right!
It's a story about a talking plant with an insatiable taste for human blood. It's also a musical.
Feed me Seymour, feed me all night long.
It may be hard to believe, but that 8-foot-tall monster with the soulful singing voice was based on a real plant. One that's fascinated people around the world since it first became widely known in the late 1700s. In fact, my home state of North Carolina recently created a special license plate featuring the flytrap. And it honestly inspired me. So I visited the North Carolina Botanical Garden in Chapel Hill to see a Venus flytrap for the very first time.
These are our carnivorous plant displays. There are Venus flytraps.
Oh, they're so tiny.
And many of these beds, I think sometimes people expect Little Shop of Horror, these big giant plants. And they are not big giant plants. They're fairly small. My name is Michael Kunz. I'm the Director of Conservation Programs here at the North Carolina Botanical Garden.
As we walked next to a row of flytraps, Mike explained just how unique these plants actually are.
Each of the traps that we classically think of as like the actual flytrap is a leaf. It's a modified leaf that's just been modified through generations and generations of evolution and adaptation.
So it's a leaf, it's not a flower.
Yes, those are the leaves that we're seeing. But then once that leaf fully matures and it opens, the inside of that pad of the trap has these tiny little hairs, and they're trigger hairs. And when an insect gets inside of those, the first time it moves one of those trigger hairs, it'll start to close. And then if that insect continues to move and brushes a second hair, it'll close completely and trap that insect inside. And then it'll seal itself off so the insect can't get out, and it's digested then. And the reason it does that is because they grow in very nutrient-poor soils, usually very wet and very high in peat. And so there's just very low organic matter. And so to get the nutrients they need, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and some of the other things, they've adapted to be able to digest the insects. And so they're getting those extra nutrients from being able to use that insect material as food.
My whole 15-minute tour was like this. Mike would just spit out a weird fact about the plant, and I would be blown away. But the most surprising part of it all?
It is only currently found within about 90 miles of Wilmington, so predominantly North Carolina and a few counties of South Carolina. So it's got this really narrow geographic range, but probably one of the most recognized plants throughout the world. You can travel all over the place and find them in stores and nurseries, and so it's pretty fascinating that it's so widely loved because it's so unique. But yet if you want to see them in the wild, naturally occurring, you really have to come to the Carolinas to be able to see them.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic, to be honest.
It's a really, really, really cool ecosystem.
Sara Heise Graybeal is a freelance journalist and folklorist. Last year, she wrote a story for The Assembly about the plant's cultural impact. For her research, she went to see a stand of wild Venus flytraps in the Green Swamp. It's a 17,000-acre preserve managed by the Nature Conservancy in the southeastern corner of North Carolina.
And then there's just this like sandy trail that kind of goes off into the distance. It's really beautiful. For parts of the walk, you're in these big open meadows, and then it gets really swampy, and you're like walking on a boardwalk through these swamps. And then you come out on the other side and you're back to meadow. And they grow in the kind of space that exists between the longleaf pine savanna and the pocosin, which is the more swampy areas. And they don't really grow anywhere else. And you can experience it all in 10 minutes out there.
And while their ecosystem may be harsh and hard to find, Sara says they thrive in it.
Yeah, Venus flytraps actually can live up to like 20 years old, which is pretty amazing. However, each little trap only gets like 3 closures and then subsequent openings before it falls off. So a plant can regrow more traps in order to keep trapping insects, but the traps have a very limited lifespan.
What kind of threats does the flytrap face?
So the place where I focused a lot of my research and my reporting was in Brunswick County, which is right on the coast in southeastern North Carolina. Brunswick County is the fastest growing, or was as of a couple years ago at least, was the fastest growing county in the state and the 6th fastest growing in the country in terms of population. So that kind of helps describe what I would consider the number one threat to the Venus flytrap, which is development. There are just tons of stories of Venus flytraps all over construction sites, and then the bulldozer comes in and there are no more Venus flytraps. They are a plant that have made a way of living not only on like protected lands, but also in ditches along the side of the road next to power lines. So lots of places where like if highways are being expanded, if, you know, there's just more businesses going in, more houses going in, those are all threats to the flytrap. Fire suppression is another big threat to the flytrap, and fire is necessary to the Venus flytrap in order to survive because it is very low to the ground and it needs direct sunlight. So as soon as there's enough undergrowth that it can't get that direct sunlight, it starts to die out.
Wow. So after a fire, they kind of thrive.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yep. And that is interconnected with development because as more of the landscape along the North Carolina coast is built up, more of it is privately owned. And so it is hard to go in and get, 20,000 homeowners to agree to burn their backyards in order to make a more hospitable habitat for the flytrap. So those are kind of like the 2 things that I would say are the really big threats to the flytrap.
But there is one more threat to these tiny, meat-eating plants, and it's grabbed the vast majority of the headlines in recent years.
In the past, officers have seized over 2,000 at one time.
Coming up after the break, we'll dig into the murky underground scene of Venus flytrap poaching.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Host. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethost.com/terms.
My name is Matt Criscoe. I'm an area sergeant for Brunswick and Columbus County, and I'm employed by the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, Division of Enforcement.
Matt is a wildlife cop. He travels the rural backroads of eastern North Carolina, protecting endangered and vulnerable species and enforcing hunting, fishing, and boating laws. His beat is a little different from a traditional policeman's, but last year he was involved in a classic law enforcement maneuver straight out of a cheesy cop show: a stakeout.
So that day we got a call from the property owner saying, hey, I've got a couple of folks on my property right now.
Matt's unit suspected that these folks were doing more than just trespassing.
And we all kind of come up with a quick game plan and headed toward Bowling Springs. We dropped a few officers off here and there, the place that they entered from, and then we kind of staggered up the road of possible places that they would come out of the property.
Then they waited and waited. And after about 2 hours, the suspects finally appeared.
We seized the baggage, the backpack, and sure enough, we took it back to our office, opened it up, and there's right under 600 plants, that we had laid out. So at that point, we went back to the magistrate's office, took out warrants on them for felony possession.
Felony possession of a Venus flytrap. Because in North Carolina, the taking of a plant is punishable by up to 25 months in prison.
In my opinion, I think that that's helped out probably more than anything. But it still goes on quite a bit. We still get reports, especially this time of year. So it's something that people will still take a chance on getting caught to dig those traps and get them sold.
In places like Brunswick County, this game of cat and mouse is constantly happening. But journalist Sara Heise Graybeal says that it's a relatively recent development. Has it always been such a severe offense to harvest Venus flytraps from the wild?
No, not at all. So in the 1950s is when harvesting Venus flytraps became a misdemeanor in North Carolina. However, that constituted maybe like a $10 fine, if that. And a lot of people continued to dig Venus flytraps with government-issued permits that, were collector's licenses, essentially, that let them legally dig flytraps and sell them. And then in 1991, the Venus flytrap became a plant of special concern, which meant that the fines that a judge could kind of dole out for digging Venus flytraps became higher. However, the collector's licenses were still in circulation. That was still a viable option up until 2014, when it became a felony to dig Venus flytraps. And that's when it really became impossible to dig them legally anywhere except like your own backyard or on someone's private property who's given you permission to dig them.
Sara says that while the decade-old law has plenty of supporters, it's also upset some locals who for generations had harvested and sold plants for supplemental income.
So the idea that it would be a felony to dig one really caught people by surprise, I think. And I think for some people has felt a bit like scapegoating, like we're bringing in 20,000 more houses to this development. Clearly, there's lots of flytraps that are being obliterated here, and yet, we're focusing on the individual people digging 50 at a time.
Then there are the demographics.
Conservation communities tend to be largely white. Former flytrappers tend to be largely Black, so there are race and class dynamics there as well.
According to Sara, there's also growing frustration among some conservationists and even law enforcement officials who believe more should be done to go after the middlemen and the buyers instead of low-level flytrappers. Which leads to the big question: where exactly are these black market plants going?
Such a good question. It's not going to be a long answer because I almost have no answer for that. It's one of the most difficult questions to answer. There is a thought that there are plant collectors who come into town from other places because they want natively grown fly traps, even though you can buy a fly trap at Walmart in Seattle, but people who come to town because they want a fly trap from the North Carolina soil.
And this is where things get very weird.
There is another thought that there are companies out of the country largely who are using fly traps in order to create cancer treatment products that are not sanctioned in the United States.
Really?
It's a whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I've talked to fly trappers who have shared with me that this is something that happens and that this is where a lot of fly traps from North Carolina have gone. However, I have not been able to get a single data point that I can really track to do further reporting on that.
Huh.
So I don't know. I have no idea. It's a great question. I wish I knew.
Do we know how many Venus flytraps exist? It sounds like they're really hard to find from your descriptions.
Yeah.
What is is there a general consensus about how much at risk these plants actually are?
I don't think there is a general consensus. It really does depend who you ask. Even within more scientific environmentalist communities, there is not really a consensus. In 2018, a conservation biologist named Lori Heyman did a kind of a conservative estimate using a bunch of different sources, and she came up with an estimate of somewhere between 73,000 to 158,000 plants living natively in the wild. Between 2019 and 2022, there was this other study headed by the Natural Heritage Program, and it came up with somewhere around 900,000 flytraps in the Carolinas.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't think many people disagree that flytrap populations are declining due to all the reasons that we've talked about. But how quickly they're declining, to what degree they are in dire need of urgent protection versus kind of on a slower decline, there's not total agreement on that.
And the plant's status reflects that. In 2023, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service determined that the species does not meet the definition of threatened or endangered. Instead, it's currently listed internationally as vulnerable. But despite that uncertainty, Sara says the Venus flytrap has a legion of supporters.
There are national groups that are focused on protecting the Venus flytrap. The Nature Conservancy owns and operates part of the Green Swamp, which is a huge, area of land in Brunswick County that houses many fly traps. There are also North Carolina programs that are focused on conserving the fly trap. The North Carolina Botanical Garden in Chapel Hill has a lot of fly traps there and is very involved in efforts to protect Venus flytraps. And then there are citizen groups that are based in specific towns on the coast that are focused on keeping an eye out for Venus flytraps, literally spotting them in ditches and then putting in a phone call and relocating them to somewhere safer. There are even, in Boiling Spring Lakes, there was a much beloved town mower who mowed, the ditches and the highways, and he was fully on board with protecting the Venus flytrap and actually took over mowing from the state because he was the one who was trusted to look out for the flytraps and not mow over them. So really a pretty cool community effort from a lot of quarters. And then I want to throw in there, it might not be a popular opinion in all circles, but these communities that have dug Venus flytraps for generations are some of the people I spoke to on the coast who are most fond of the Venus flytrap and have really the most experience with it, and at least historically have been some of the people who have been concerned with keeping the plant going for the plant's sake and also to continue to have that income source.
The Venus flytrap has an extraordinary ability to bring us all together. And even though it's just a tiny plant, from one little corner of eastern North Carolina, its impact on folks is almost universal. From the longleaf pine savannas to garden centers around the world.
People are just inspired by the way that the Venus flytrap fights to survive. That they will just go to any means necessary, even though they physically cannot move from the one spot where they're situated, but they will do everything in their power to hang on to life and live one day longer. It just seems to be something that really speaks to people. Every group of people or person that I've spoken about here today is inspired by the flytrap, kind of in a similar way, and I think that that's notable.
Yeah, I mean, I had kind of a similar experience when I went to see them in person for the first time in my life at the Botanical Garden. They're so small and cute, and yet they're so bloodthirsty. I mean, it's just like, like the one little leaf is the size of maybe your fingernail.
Totally. And they've generated so much debate and discussion, and there's a license plate named after them, and they've got people from all different places and backgrounds fighting for them in different ways. It's really remarkable.
If you'd like to read Sara Heise Graybeal's article about the Venus flytrap, we've dropped a link in this week's show notes. And a quick heads up. As of 2024, if you live in North Carolina, you can get a Venus flytrap themed license plate. The very same one that inspired this episode. And how do you personally feel about the license plate?
I think it's great. I have one on my car. Yeah, and it's self-serving because it helps support the conservation work that we're able to do with Venus flytraps and with a lot of rare plants across North Carolina.
This episode was produced by me, Anissa Khalifa, and our editor, Jared Walker. The rest of our team includes producer Charlie Shelton Ormond and executive producer Wilson Sayre. The Broadside is a production of WUNC North Carolina Public Radio and is part of the NPR network. If you have feedback or a story idea, you can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.
This summer, Pluto TV is exploding with thousands of free movies. Summer of Cinema is here. Feel the explosive action all summer long with movies like Gladiator, Mission Impossible, Beverly Hills Cop, Good Burger, and Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Bring the action with you and stream for free from all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.